you do with Du Plessis? If you were the decision maker, if you got the magic wand, what do you do with Dricus Du Plessi? I think that it's a tough spot. I think it's a tough spot when you try to operate in the world of fairness, which so seldomly happens in this sport. Oh, and by the way, you'll never hear me saying that it should happen. I am fully accustomed and aware, right? I became calloused and hardened many years ago that there's no such thing as fair, that you are going to take what you can take when you can take it. But there does seem to be two stories running parallel. And a lot of times those are hard to hide from. Okay? If you were going to punish Merab, by example, who I do not want punished at all, who I think Merab has done an awesome job in all parts. I love the 9 in a row. I love the activity. I love getting his hand fixed and not telling anybody. I love stealing the coat. I love that he's busy, that he's campaigning, not only for his guy, but for his own title shots. Like, I love everything about Merab, but it was said by Merab, I will not fight Aljo. And where that became a problem, it was a very sweet thing to say. They had a deal made. Merab win. It was a very sweet thing to say. Where it had become a problem is he wasn't asked to fight Aljo. It's the problem in any type of business meeting or negotiation, saying too much. Do you ever read the Lessons of the Stoic? The Lessons of the Stoic, who many think is a very brilliant man. I don't really want to hang out with the guy. He seems a little bit dull to me, but I will subscribe that I do understand some of his teachings, and the smartest guy in the room will sit there saying the least. And when it all gets done, nobody ever walks up to him and says, boy, you must have been awfully dumb because you didn't say anything. And had that ever happened, the Stoic would have looked at him and said, I was smart enough to know not to speak. Put off the presence that I had the information anyhow. I'm bringing it to you because that was Merab's biggest mistake. Nobody ever asked him to fight Aljo. He offered it. Nobody ever said, are you the number one contender? Should you be in there with Aljo next? That had never come up. Not to mention, they had a few ways to skin the cat on their own. On their own, they had already discussed, Aljo's going to do this. He's going to leave the division, just like King Khabib did. And when King Khabib left, he left his heir apparent. They already had worked out that they were going to do that same thing. But Merab hadn't got to that point. And the mistake that he made is he said, I will not fight Aljo, prior to anybody saying, Merab, would you like to fight Aljo? And the order of those events greatly do matter. Because once it's asked by a person in a position of authority, do you want to fight Aljo? You just got offered a world title fight. You just now got named number one contender. But if that ask never comes in, you're now not. Small detail. But will there be a punishment and will there be a payback? It would be very easy looking on paper to see where Merab should go right in against O'Malley. But you would be confronted with the fact that one day ago, I asked him to do a different job and he refused. Through his refusal, he's now getting a better and more sought after job, and I just can't let that happen. So I bring the Merab story to you because meanwhile, we have Du Plessi. And Du Plessi, for reasons unknown, did not do the fight and did not show up to the fight. And they were both as equally confusing. That's a nice way to say it. Maybe old red pill MMA is worn off on me. Maybe I'm changing my ways over here. That's as nice as I can say it. Du Plessis had a fight that he got the hard way. He didn't get it handed to him. He worked for it. He's scratching his clawed for his positioning on cards all the way in to going in a 3-1 underdog against Robert Whittaker. Nobody can beat Robert Whittaker. Nobody that is not named Israel Adesanya can get the jump on Robert Whittaker. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure Adesanya can. Like the more they dance, the more Whittaker starts to figure out that dance, right? And all I'm attempting to do there before I bring Izzy in on, I'm just attempting to compliment Du Plessi and what he did. Because in that very moment, he changed his mind. Then he was giving marching orders, and he was giving them by the decision maker himself, Adesanya. Before you say, Adesanya, you don't sign my paychecks. No, he doesn't, but he will say who stands across from him. Better than anyone in this sport has ever done it. 100% accuracy. And Adesanya told Du Plessis be in attendance that night. He wasn't there. And what would have happened if he was? What would have happened if he was? Maybe he got ignored. Maybe Adesanya calls him out. Hey, I ain't champ and you're not champ, but we're going to do a number one contendership. Maybe. That's unlikely. Or maybe Izzy does him the ultimate solid, which I ain't the champ anymore, and I know you've been waiting your turn, and you showed up here like I told you to do. Sean Strickland, please say hello to DDP because he's your next opponent. Those things are not outside of question. They're not. Those are stretches made by me, but they're not outside of question. Those are stretches. Let's just go back to apples for apples. If I'm saying a decision maker is not going to make this offer to Merab as a way of a payback for something that Merab had done days before, right? And I don't love the idea of that, by the way. I don't think you can come home and kick a dog today for something he did last week. But if that is in fact what we're going to do, and we've got at the same time, we've got Du Plessis who did the same thing. He refused to do a fight for whatever reason. You don't think you have to fill in the blank about the pinky or the rib or the foot or the neck. You don't have to fill in the blank. I'm making a very broad statement. He refused to do a fight. Open-ended, for whatever reason. But it doesn't change things, and it doesn't change the things that cage got set up and those tickets got sold. That beer got poured, that popcorn got popped. Those announcers checked into the hotel, those fighters got onto the scale, those people filled up that building. And those contests were contested. A side, B side, upside, downside, red side, left side, any way that you want to do it. He didn't say Du Plessis. So what do I do now? What do I do now? Now that I have this mega piece of business, what do I do now? Do I look to you on the sideline? And coming up next, it's Du Plessis, and he's got the leg raise machine at our local 24 Get Fit. Oh, and just after the commercial break, we're going to throw to Du Plessis. He's got an ice sack on his elbow, and he's held it there for 7 straight minutes. And I'm not teasing him, I'm saying, is that the kind of B-roll I go to? Or do I say, coming up on Fight Island on this Saturday, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 in the West, it is the man they call the Terminator, Costa Philippou. Paulo Costa. You see the difference, though? But do you see the difference? He's taking on the man who has no manager. They call him the Wolf. He's undefeated. You show the wolf growl. You show the Terminator coming through the smoke. Is that what you want to do? Whoever comes out of this battle, or do we want to see the guy who's moving the 10-pound plates around, a couple of these ice? It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So what do you do? Where do you work him back in at? Now that we've acknowledged we have to work him back in, where do we work him in at? The UFC thought that he should be an undercard on December 10th. UFC did not think he should be a main card. After July 3rd, they thought he should be a title challenger. They got all of those ideas from Du Plessis. Du Plessis was the squeaky wheel that got the grease. Du Plessis is the one that told him, I don't belong on undercards. I belong on main cards. I belong in co-main events. I belong fighting in elimination bouts that if I win, I should fight for the world title. Every single one of those ideas was his idea. Seemed like they all turned out to be really good ideas. But for right now, I haven't heard an idea. I haven't heard what he says he wants to do. I haven't heard if he says he wants to settle this business with Izzy and it's got nothing to do with the belt, or if he thinks that he should be able to move on to Sean Strickland, or if he's going to be cage side and Fight Island and he will be the one to take care of the winner of the Terminator versus Chimaev. I haven't heard a single idea yet. And success is not for everybody. You think you want something, but there's a pressure that comes along with it. You think you want up in those lights, and all of a sudden it gets a little bit too bright. You think you want to be on top, and you realize it's lonely up there. And I'm starting to get this buyer's remorse from Du Plessis. I have an open mind. He steered his career by himself to this point. But where does he attempt to navigate from here? I can sit here and guess, but I don't want to. He's the one that got himself here. I'd like to hear what his plan and what direction he likes to go from here. I'd like to hear it from him.